Good evening, I'm Bev Smith. Along with Hilton Felton, our piano man, we welcome you to a very special conversation with a very special man, the Honorable Minister of the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan. We greet you by saying Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, my sister.
You said who really cares? Let us deal for a moment with African Americans. Do we care about ourselves in 1990?
I think that there are many of our people who do care, Beverly, but we don't know how to make our caring substantive for our own relief. We have many leaders that articulate the problem, but we are not working collectively to bring about a solution to the worsening crisis of our people. I think a lot of our people care, but we just lack the guidance and the program to bring about the redress of our grievances.
We will spend a great deal of time this evening talking about the program, but you also mentioned the guidance. Let's look to that for a moment. Have we ever, as we have been in this country as of African descent, had guidance? And if so, in your opinion, where did the guidance come from?
From the time that we were on the plantations, God gave us a natural sense of guidance, even though the slave masters never allowed our mothers and fathers to learn to read or write. But there's something about the nature of the human being. When we saw the change of seasons, the night pass into day and the day pass into night, our mothers and fathers knew that a change would come. And so many of our slave parents couldn't talk to us straight out, so they put little hints in spirituals. So we got a spiritual like Deep River. My home is over Jordan. I want to cross over into campground. Oh, don't you want to go where? To that promised land where all is peace. Let's steal away. We can't walk away. We can't run away. Let's steal away home.
Sending a message.
Sending a message.
As we look at, and as I said, we're going to spend a lot of time hearing what you have to say. As we look at the African American community, who sends a message today? Because whoever it is, are they sending the message loud enough?
You know, God has so wonderfully blessed us with many men and women to send us messages. So many, like Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, W.E.B. Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, Elijah Muhammad, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. But every time, Sister Beverly, we got somebody to give us a message that would amend the condition that 400 years of slavery imposed upon us. Those in power, fearing that message and the messenger and our possible unity around that message, did something to that message and that messenger. And this is why, Sister Beverly, we have never had any continuity of struggle. We always seem to be going back over the same ground again.
We're talking about the message being stopped and the messenger. He also mentioned fear. Time for a break. When we come back, what is this fear the white man has for the African American? And what is the message? And are we hearing it today? And also, we want you to get involved when you dial 1-800-344-BETV. 1-800-344-BETV. If you are in Virginia, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, area code 202-636-2060. That's 202-636-2060. Now, when we come back, we'll pick up on why they fear us, and we'll let you talk to the Honorable Minister of the Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan. The state of Africans who are here in America, that's our topic tonight, with the Honorable Minister from the Nation of Islam, Minister Louis Farrakhan. Let's take the gloves off and get right to it. You mentioned fear. What is there to fear? Why are whites afraid of us?
Whenever you've done wrong and you've deceived the person, there's always a fear of being discovered and uncovered. Whenever you have oppressed a people, you're always afraid that one day the oppressed will rise and become the oppressor. So here we are, black people in America, increasing in very large numbers. And according to the scriptures, Pharaoh feared the multiplication of the children of Israel. And his words were, "Come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. Join on to an enemy of ours, and remember our evil done to them, and come against us." White people put their mind on us. They don't see us as a forgiving and loving people. They can only judge us by what they know they would do if this were done to them by us.
But the interesting thing about African Americans is that we have never at any time demonstrated the kind of anger toward them that they are fearful of. If we can be accused of anything, then the accusation should be that we demonstrate our anger against each other. I should be the fearful one. Black on black crime is at an all-time high. What the heck are they afraid of?
Again, they don't mind black on black crime, because as long as we are attacking each other, they feel safe. When we come into order and peace and discipline and love and unity, then they become intensely afraid, because that guilt comes right back up. They feel it is owed to them, and therefore why shouldn't we punish them as they punished us?
You use the term owed to them. Recently, I've been reading a lot about you because you have made some statements about what you think is owed to us as a result of what you call our Holocaust in America. What is owed to us?
You know, it's very interesting when we talk about a black Holocaust and we try to get black people to remember what has happened to us. That's called hatred. When Jewish persons keep talking about what Hitler did to them, that's called remembering, so it will never happen again. Many of our scholars estimate that in the Middle Passage from Africa to America, we lost in the neighborhood of 100 million black lives. The soil of America is soaked with the blood of our fathers. So when we start talking about what is owed to us, we have to consider the 100 million lives that were lost in the Middle Passage. We have to consider 300 years of chattel slavery. We have to consider the damage that was done to our psyche, to our minds, by taking away from us our names, our language, our culture, our religion, our God. And as you mentioned, Sister Beverly, you and I should be the ones fearful because of the black on black crime. But we were systematically taught in this society to hate the blackness of our skin, to hate our African origin, to think of ourselves as nothing. So as Jesus said, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So if I think I'm nothing and I hate myself and my origin, then when I look at you, I see an extension of myself. Therefore, I'm bitter towards you and I strike out towards you. But all these years, we have been taught just the opposite about white people. We've been taught to love them, to forgive them. We've been given an image of our Savior, Jesus Christ, and that image is white. Although the description of Jesus in the Bible is quite the contrary. So we have been taught all our lives to look up to white, to idolize white, even to worship white. And so when they did that recent story on television where they asked a young black child to pick up the doll
baby, yes,
that they would admire, she picked up the white doll. It is because we have been made to be and to love other than ourselves and to hate ourselves. All of this is a part of our Holocaust. And when Abraham Lincoln let us go, and I put that in quotes, and the 13th Amendment struck down involuntary slavery, the way our minds had been fixed, we couldn't do anything but go right back to the same slave master and volunteer to be a slave.
But this is 1990, before we go to the phones, Minister Farrakhan. In the 60s, in the 70s, we had what could be called a revolution of sorts. In the 50s, we had the writings of Malcolm X. We had the emergence of the Honorable Minister Elijah Muhammad, who you followed. We had Dr. Martin Luther King. We had Stokely Carmichael yelling, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." We had organizations like the Urban League funding grants in communities to work on projects for self-esteem. You mean in 1990, we don't feel good about who we are? Why not?
Because, Sister Beverly, when Dr. King was assassinated and 100 cities went up in smoke, white folk began to study us. And they studied why we acted on one accord without any leader, no conspiracy. What brought this about? And they found that it was television. It was black programming, pardon me. It was like Black Journal, Black on Black. All of these black programs, Soul, were on television. And if you notice, since the late 60s and early 70s, every one of these black programs have been taken off the air, and the language has changed. We are no longer black and Hispanic. We are the minority, the underclass. You see? So we are relegated now to an inferior numerical status, an underclass, and these are code words to keep us from using the term black, which we rallied around in the 60s.
You're saying then it is deliberate. But then
Absolutely.
If it is deliberate, and there are those among us who are wise enough to see the signs, why isn't there some attempt? I mean, it isn't as if we don't know what the enemy is all about. We have studied the enemy, some of us, from our breast as we suckle them. So why is it we are buying into the plan?
You know, some of our leaders who, after the Civil Rights Bill of 64 and 65 and the Voting Rights Bill of, I think it's 66 or 67, many of our black intellectuals were so happy that we could go into places among white people that we never went before. We didn't pay attention to the critical era of writing our history. And so right while we were looking, Dr. King was distilled to one sentence, "I have a dream." Malcolm X was distilled to one phrase, "By any means necessary." And our history was being reversed, and now children are growing up in high schools in America feeling that we don't have anything to struggle for. We have already attained the promised land. Again, don't forget the counterintelligence program of J. Edgar Hoover, where that man and the government of the United States purposely set out to undermine, discredit, destroy black leaders, black organizations, and put us one against the other. And so in the 60s and 70s, we've seen the destruction of all of our black organizations, all of our black leaders, and unfortunately today, we only have two remaining national voices for the hurt of our people. One is Jesse Jackson, and the other is Louis Farrakhan.
Let's take a call. Good evening. Thank you for being out there. You're on Our Voices. I need your first name and where you're calling from.
Yes, Bev. This is Ferris calling from Maywood, Illinois.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I have a question for the minister. I'd like to know, with all the atrocities that have plagued black folks, black men and women throughout the centuries, can he see any signs of retribution, not by the hands of blacks toward mankind, but even by with nature? Is there any forms of retribution that you can see in the near future that we can live to see?
You're living in it, my dear brother, right now. God is not unjust. Even though one white president said he trembled for his country when he reflected that God is just and that his justice cannot sleep forever. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, our illustrious leader and teacher, taught us that whenever a nation's evil outweighed its good, there are forces in the universe itself that will remove that nation, that government, that people. And so here we are in America. Look all around you. Look at the natural plagues and the natural disasters that are afflicting America. You will see these natural disasters increase in intensity. And not only will you see the increase of natural disasters, God has set his hand against the economy of America. She's weakening all the time. And around her, the neighboring nations are turning against America, even as they turned against ancient Babylon.
But will the voices of the oppressed in America be heard? That's the question.
There is no question that the voices of the oppressed will be heard. In fact, the voice of this brother that speaks for the hurt and pain of our people is being heard in spite of the fact that they've called me everything other than what I am. Look how God is blessing us to overcome.
We'll go to a break, and when we return, we'll find out what they've been calling him and what he's been calling them right after this. As we led into the break, Minister Farrakhan said they've called me everything but a child of God. They have. They've called you racist. They've called you anti-Semitic. They've called you a separatist. They've called you a man who practices and preaches hatred. What are you?
I'm a Muslim. And a Muslim is one who believes in obeying the will of God. And I guess you could say I'm a Christian too, because to be a Christian is to be crystallized into oneness with God, following the example of Jesus Christ. As a Muslim, we believe in all of the prophets and we believe in all of the scriptures brought by the prophets. But why do they call me these names? When a man appears with a message in his mouth that can change the condition of a people, the oppressor fears the man and the message. If they can color the man with an evil stroke, then the people will pay no attention to his message. So they call me a racist. But what is a racist? If we look at the word race and we look at the suffix ist, that suffix tells us the degree of commitment and dedication of the person involved to the main word. So if I play the violin and I become proficient at it, dedicate my life to it, you call me a violinist. And if I give my life to art and become great at it, you call me an artist, a physicist, a chemist. Well, if I love my people... So are you saying you're a
racist?
I'm saying in the positive sense that I love my people.
Let's take a call. Good evening. Thank you for being out there. You're on Our Voices. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Helen. I'm calling from Portsmouth, Virginia. And I want to say hello to your guest tonight.
Hello.
What I would like to say is that I have a solution to the problem. I think that all the black people that have abandoned their neighborhoods and, you know, been brainwashed, just sort of like have a black amnesty and come on back to the neighborhoods and help the oppressed blacks, the blackness down. And what happened when some of the black people got a little bit on their feet and making a little bit of money, they wanted to turn white, and that didn't work. Now they're all embarrassed because of this generational drug, but they're to blame for that. So what I suggest is that, you know, just come on back to your neighborhood. We're going to have a black amnesty. Just come on back, say, I'm sorry, I made a big mistake. Just come on back and just help our neighborhoods. I even had a supervisor tell me one time when she got on her feet, I would never go back to this black neighborhood. Now, isn't that something for a black person to say they have gotten on their feet? You know, this is what caused these young people wild like they are now.
Okay,
and, you know,
let's get his response. in all fairness to the caller, if every black person in America went back to the black community, whatever the black community is, would that help the problem?
I think that the black community is bereft of positive role models. Most of those who make it, and I put that in quotes, because many who appear to make it are only about 3 paychecks away from the condition they just left.
1 paycheck,
so,
1 paycheck.
But what we do need is our professional people. Their skills and expertise needs to come back home to lift our people up.
But are we receptive when we come back? Because the in-house fighting among us is unbelievable. And we carry our fights to the streets, unlike most marriages where the arguments are contained in the house. We spill out in the streets. Are we ready to open our arms for each other? Because some of us are so angry that if I knock on your door and say, Brother Farrakhan, I'm here to help you, you will attack me because I don't speak like you. I don't look like you. I'm darker than you. I'm lighter than you. I'm in this sorority. You're in that fraternity. Stop me if I go
Sister
too
Beverly,
far.
no, but what you're pointing out is the horrible condition of our Holocaust. And that's why the message that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad brought to us is a message that cleanses, purifies, straightens up this kind of mentality and makes us accept ourselves and accept the brilliance among us for what it is, because we need it. But we can't just bring black people back, as Sister said, bring them back into the ghetto and we just have an amnesty. That, I mean, that's a beautiful sentiment.
Right, but it won't work.
But we have to teach our people, both those who have left the ghetto and those who remain, that we can be acceptable to ourselves.
You have said that we can be acceptable to the point that if the United States gives us money, reparations, that we can take that money, find us a place, either in the United States or Africa, separate ourselves from America, and do well together. Is that realistic?
It's more realistic than integration. We've tried this hypocritical trick called integration. But in reality, Sister Beverly, black people have been separated ever since we've been in this country. That form of separation was called segregation, which is a forced separation by a superior on an inferior. But even under segregation in the South, black people had our own bus companies, our own hotels, motels, restaurants, you name it, we had it. But the moment integration came, the black economy in the South broke apart. And now we don't have any of those things. And worst of all, we don't have what is called integration. So now, what is the solution to the problem? Welfare is given to a people to what we call subsidize them. My mom was a welfare recipient. I can't knock it. My mother used it with wisdom and discretion. And with that welfare, that black mother of mine went to work sometimes cleaning white folks' floors, but she was a magnificent seamstress, and so she would sew at night, and she put my brother and myself into music school.
But
welfare had its value.
But wouldn't reparations be considered welfare also?
No, welfare has a different motivation. Everywhere America has gone, she has taken indigenous native people, put them on what they call the dole, which weakens them spiritually, morally, and makes them totally dependent on America. This is the problem in the Philippines, in the Far East. This is the problem with black people in America. This is a problem everywhere in the world where you're trying to suppress and oppress people. Reparation is a form of justice, recognizing that we've done something wrong to a people and we want to do something to repair the damage.
All right, what would we do with it though? If it is possible to do what you say, hypothetically, to take, because I'm not sure that we don't have as much right to this soil called America as anyone else. We have designed it. We have saved it. We have shed our blood for it. So why then should we give in? Why shouldn't we say, we fought, we died, we created lights, we created souls, we gave you blood plasma, we gave you the light bulb. Why should we not say, we are Americans?
Well, you know, I heard Malcolm once say, you know, a cat can have kittens in an oven, but that doesn't make them biscuits. You know, you can be born in America. That doesn't make you an American.
What does?
You
Color?
know, no. It's the rights and privileges of an American. The real definition of American, according to their dictionary, is one of European descent, not belonging to the Aboriginal people. So from the very definition, we were left out of it. And certainly when the founding fathers said we the people, they didn't mean we us folk. They meant we them folk. Now here we are trying to fit in a house. And you're right, Beverly. We have as much right to this, in fact, more right to this than white folk themselves. I'm not saying that all black people should just pack up and go, but reparations means not just money, but land into which we can go to build a real future for ourselves and our people.
How, Minister Farrakhan, are you going to get white folks to give black folks money? Because what, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Here's money for the pain and suffering that I've caused you. In order to do that, they, the whites who are in the power structure, not all whites, controlling whites, are going to have to admit several things. One, systematically, they've discriminated against us. Two, they've discriminated against us to the point of death. Now, they are not even willing to admit during the month of February, which is Black History Month, that we have even played a historical part in this country. How are you going to get them to admit that they were racist to the point that they'll give us money?
Of course, the President Johnson had what is called the Kerner Commission. They have already admitted it. It's a historical fact. They have written it, published it, it's in their libraries.
But the Supreme Court has pushed that back. The Supreme Court has said during the Reagan administration, that's not so. We don't need affirmative action. Look at the court's decisions. We don't need to do that. And the attitude of the average white American is that we have already bent over backwards for you folks. You are dumb, stupid, illiterate, don't want to work, kill each other, you shouldn't live in the community, and we have done enough for you.
Well, of course, sister, you know, the condition of black people is such. There's only two alternatives. Integration now is a physical impossibility. So either you separate us or you annihilate us. Now, the annihilation process is going on right now as we speak. How long do you think black folk are going to take this kind of treatment? And if in the twinkling of an eye in Eastern Europe, people rose up and overturned an existing government in a matter of a week or two, what do you think will happen when 30 million people decide, look, we've had enough, we're not going to take this anymore. Either America does justice by us or the country goes up.
We'll take a break.
Which way we're going?
That's what I want to know. Which
Separation or annihilation?
Can we still listen to what you have to say right after this? We're continuing our conversation with the Honorable Minister from the Nation of Islam, Minister Louis Farrakhan. And remember, the lines are open and you can join in when you dial 1-800-344-BETV. A curious thing happens to a man when he goes to prison, and I have been dying to find out what it is you do. When a man in jail is exposed to the Nation of Islam, when the brothers in prison who are Muslim talk to the young men in prison, something happens to them. It is a physical change, and everyone out there watching knows what I mean. You can tell the man is different. when the outstanding representative from the Nation of Islam in Washington, D.C., Minister Muhammad, went out to the communities with a few Muslim brothers, the drug pushers left. What are you able to do? What's the magic?
It's not magic at all. It's just the knowledge that we have of who and what we're dealing with. Black people aren't really criminals by nature. They're criminals by circumstance. When they get into prison, they have a chance to be to themselves and to think. And when they're in that state, we introduce them to the knowledge of themselves. Once a person is turned on to self-knowledge, then they begin to take on the virtue of learning. Malcolm X is a perfect example. Malcolm, as you know, was a pimp, a hustler, a bank robber. He left school when he was in the 8th grade, and he looked like most young blacks out there tonight, without hope, in despair. But when he heard the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it quickened in him the spark of self. And that man read everything in the prison library and came out, and there was not one scholar that debated Malcolm who could defeat him. And I suggest to you that those brothers and sisters in prison, when they're exposed to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it makes the difference.
But do I have to be, because I have been exposed, but I'm a Baptist, do I have to give up my religion to embrace a philosophy that I may concur with?
Not at all. You know, we're not saying that people should be converted. What we're saying is that people must be taught. And once you understand that the faith that you have and the faith that I have and the faith that someone else has, it's the same basic faith given to us by God, not from the Bible, not from the Quran, but God has given us this faith by nature. So what happens is that faith needs to be fed and evolved so that we become men and women of faith. Then we can do that which people say is impossible.
All right, I want to give you an impossible task, and we want to be specific. I am extremely fearful that we are going to lose an entire generation of young African American men. Quote the statistics, I'll have to. 1 out of 4. We are looking at a very violent young man, angry, eating his own flesh, turning on his mothers, his grandmothers, his sisters, his brothers, turning on himself. Now, what would you do? What is your plan? How is your plan any different than anyone else's plan? How would you get at this young brother?
You know, we are exceedingly successful. Dr. Alim here in Washington can go into any of the high schools, and we can go into prisons, as I go into prisons, some of the most unruly of our people. Inside of a few minutes, they are disciplined at attention. I was taken on what is called death row among young black men who don't have any chance of parole. Their whole life is to be spent behind bars. And the warden of that prison did not want me to go in behind the bars. I said, I have to go in and talk to them. He said, well, you're taking a great chance. We went inside. Those men sat down around me, and within 15 or 20 minutes, you could see light and life coming into their faces. And I called the guards. I said, come and look at these that you call animals. These are human beings. Now, these young people that you're talking about, who are cold and violent and brutal, that is the fruit that we have produced.
Then we're to blame.
I don't say we're to blame. I say it is the natural process when you and I have hoped for freedom and longed for freedom. You have to have a generation that is strong enough to fulfill that hope. So fulfillment doesn't look like hope. And this generation is violent because we live in a violent time. This generation rejects the education because the education is unfit for them.
All right,
They
let me
reject
stop you.
religion, they reject their parents, because God does not want this generation feeding from the same garbage that we have been fed and that we are trying to feed them.
I have a problem with that, because education, as I've said many times, has never been directed at us. Yet we survived and we were educated without turning on each other. We didn't have programs, but we fed each other, we clothed each other, we were able to stick with each other when it was a much more fearful world in terms of our own individual safety. Walking across the street in a community that was predominantly white, for you as a black man, and lifting your head toward a white woman could get you killed, castrated. So now the young black man does not have that to be concerned about. He doesn't have that kind of fear. Why is he giving up everything that blacks before him fought so hard to do? Where is the missing link?
The missing link is the lack of continuity of knowledge that can continue the struggle. Those young men out there are the greatest generation that we have ever produced. But they're not going to listen to the sob story of mom or dad or teacher or preacher or politician. They're born to hear the word that Farrakhan is preaching from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Are you saying you're the only word out there? Earlier you said it was just you and Jesse Jackson. And then you said earlier also that there were lots of voices. Are you saying that the only real voices out there in the African American community is your voice and Jesse Jackson? Then what does that do to all the other leadership?
Well, look, sister, I'm telling you, if you walk with us through the ghetto, our children are not listening to anybody. They're not listening to Jesse. They're listening to Farrakhan. And that's what's happening in America today. It is true. There are many voices, but there's only one that black people are listening to. Why? Not because of the way I part my hair, but it's because of the message that I have that will affect black people positively.
What is your message? What do you say to us that hasn't been already said? Bear with me a moment.
Sure.
We've been told that we are inheritors of the thrones, kings and queens. We know our history, some of us. And when we have an opportunity to talk about it, we remind ourselves what we have been able to do under unbelievable conditions. So what do you say that will make us rise above what we already know and do something with ourselves, survive?
You've heard the message, and maybe you have internalized that message. One of the mistakes that we've made is we think that our children have heard that message. But our children have really not heard that message, and they're crying out for that message. And when that message is given to them, they respond. They are coming into the mosques literally by the hundreds. Literally by the hundreds.
Then let me stop you for a moment. Then that suggests then that you're the only place that they can go to hear the truth. Then you're saying that black leadership is a deficit, that the black press has not fulfilled their needs. Are you even saying that maybe the black church has not done what it's supposed to be if they're coming to you?
There's a combination of all of those things. The black press is possibly our greatest friend, but the black press is strapped financially. Black people do not support it. Black businesses don't advertise in it. Therefore, black newspapers don't have the wherewithal to send a reporter to actually get the facts. So the black press is actually the slave of the white press. Whatever comes over AP, UPI, and Reuters, that's what the black press prints. So the black media is stunted. The black church, in order to come into the 21st century, they have to preach a revived message. The black church has been the instrument that white folk have used to opiate, to sick, to make black folk acquiesce to white tutelage. Young people are not going to the church, they're running away from the church. And that's why I'm in all the major cities talking to the pastors, trying to help the pastors to revive that message, the true message of the gospel, so that together there won't be just one voice, Farrakhan, as a student of Elijah Muhammad, and all of those voices that come out from me, but all of us can speak with the same voice and be of one mind and lift our people together.
We'll take a break. When we return, let's talk politics. And let's talk politics with you. Let's talk about the Democrats, the Republicans, what they didn't do for Jesse Jackson, and why we're not voting.
Be counted. Join us on Our Voices, Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, only on BET.
We're continuing our conversation with Minister Louis Farrakhan. I've been seeing you everywhere. You have been on every major network. I'm impressed. You have been on every talk show. You've been looking like a politician. Are you thinking about running for office?
Never. I'm a spiritual man, and I love the spiritual work. I came here to Washington at the invitation of the Washington Post and the Washington Times at an editorial board meeting. Surprising to me what they did with my words. The next day, I then became somewhat of...
what did they do to your words? Didn't you say you'd like for us to go back to Africa? Did they misquote you?
No, they did not. But they didn't tell it exactly like I said it. I said that we need reparations first. We have a stake here, and we haven't given up our stake there. We want dual citizenship. I was talking about first letting the prisoners go. Since we can reform them, and America is spending from $20,000 to $35,000 per inmate, which is an awful lot of money, then give us the prisoners. Since you can't rehabilitate them, don't have the desire, let us do that. And let us ask our brothers and sisters in Africa to give us territory.
Are they willing?
I believe that Africa should be willing. For some of our African brothers help to sell us into this condition, so some of our African brothers have a responsibility to help us get out of this.
So you are not politicking. You are talking through the media so that what you said at that editorial board meeting can be clarified?
No, what I said at that editorial board meeting for the most part was very clear, and they brought it out much as I said it. But I feel that black America needs to know me. White America needs to know me, not as an anti-Semite, a bigot, a racist, but as a concerned human being, concerned primarily with the plight of black people. And I'm hoping that in our last discourse, we didn't give the impression that blacks are at fault for our condition, but as black people, we have to take the responsibility now for our own actions. Yes, white people put us in this condition, but we are responsible to help get ourselves out.
Do we even know that? Because most of the time, when I say on the air, if your child gets pregnant, it's your fault. If your boy gets in trouble, why didn't you know where he was? If your kid can't read, why isn't it your fault? People get upset. Do we know we have some responsibility?
I think we know we do have responsibility, but we should never forget the hidden hand that has always created the conditions that allow us to destroy ourselves.
And we're through for the night. We thank you for joining us. He said, Minister Farrakhan, that he wanted us to get to know him. We hope you have on Our Voices. Until the next time, God bless you. Stand up, be counted.